Welcome to Authentic Wellness with Joni and Joey. I'm Joni.
And I'm Joey.
I say it every week.
It's gonna be a good one.
But I think we have a good show.
I say this every week too. I'm really excited. We're talking today about mindfulness and meditation. And I feel like that's kind of the foundation of all of the things that we've been talking about. Really being mindful of what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. And then meditation is a chance to really kind of quiet the mind and soak everything in.
Right. And I have a meditation practice, but I know a lot of people don't.
Right.
And I think our guest today is really going to be able to help us talk through it, guide us through it. Not only why it's so important, but maybe how to do it. I think we'll do a little practice.
Yes.
And, going inside and listening.
Right.
Is sometimes it can be hard.
It can be hard because sometimes you hear things that you don't want to hear, which is what you need to hear, but maybe not what you want to hear.
Right, because you do need to pay attention.
Yeah.
Well, our guest is Andrea Dyer today.
Yes.
And she'll be here soon.
Can't wait. It's going to be a good one.
We're back with our special guest, Andrea Dyer.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here today.
So, Andrea, you, I don't know if you know that what your reputation is. If you're going to do Ashtanga yoga in Greensboro, you have to do it with Andrea.
Yay.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a good reputation to have.
Yay.
So I know not only are you a yoga instructor and have your yoga business, but you also practice a mindful meditation business. Is it a business for you? Like, what is that? How do you manage that?
I actually call meditation a passion. It kind of slid into my yoga business, but my first yoga teacher was a meditator, and I've actually circled back and studied with her during the pandemic. She's the first Western yoga teacher to bring Buddhist meditation into a yoga practice. So learning yoga that way, I thought it was part of yoga. So when I started studying Ashtanga, I thought, okay, it's a meditative practice. So you get into the groove of the breath and the movement, and it's a moving meditation. So I've always had that perspective, I guess, thanks to Cindy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I met her in the late 90s and started practicing through her books because we didn't have the internet volume of online classes back then, and got the basis for Buddhist meditation. But over the past 5 years, I've studied more closely with her. I've had what I call an amateur meditation practice over the years, but I've become certified to teach meditation now, and I practice daily, and it's changed my life, I would say.
Wow.
In a very positive way.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
People who have a meditation practice really, really talk about how it changes your life.
If you can just get yourself to be into it consistently, which is where I fall apart a little bit.
Yes, yeah, and it's like anything else. You have to exercise that muscle of sitting and just being and doing the practice. But you can do it in little chunks. You don't have to sit and meditate for hours. 5, 10, 15 minutes can be very effective. And I totally recommend it.
When you say it's Buddhist meditation, I know there are different types of yoga. I guess I never really thought about the fact that there are different types of meditation. So what are some of the different types, and what makes Buddhist meditation different?
There are definitely different types of meditation, and I think it's in the style, the technique. There are a lot of meditation apps now, but they're mostly led. And the type of meditation that Cindy does, that she learned from her teachers, is in the Buddhist tradition. It's called shamatha, which is the calm abiding. So you learn to sit and become awake and be calm with whatever is going on. So it seems a little daunting. A lot of meditation practices, you practice with your eyes closed and you do visualizations, and those are good practices, but this is really the practice of becoming awake and calm. And it helps translate off of the meditation cushion or the chair, wherever you're sitting to do this.
So you don't have your eyes closed?
You can practice with your eyes open. And for beginners, we practice with eyes open but cast downward. So it limits what you're taking in visually because it can be stimulating, it can be distracting to see a lot of things at once. As you progress and become more comfortable with sitting, you raise your eyes. So you take in more at eye level, which is a broader swath. But it's to be awake. And awake emotionally, mentally, physically, and energetically.
And no music in the background. It's not led, it's not guided.
It's led a little bit when you're sitting with a teacher, but you learn how to stage yourself. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in the beginning, you acclimate through your physical posture. You start to tune in to what is physically around you. So you're taking in the sight of what you're looking at. You're taking in the sounds that are available in the room. And you're taking in the things that are present with you, like your breath and the things you feel in your body. And you can also notice your thoughts. But the practice of meditation is to step away from thought because thought is a mechanism for survival. We're wired to go into the past and into the future to protect ourselves. So we have to rerun why that tiger was chasing us, and then we have to go into the future to plan for no tigers to ever chase us again. So the practice of being in the present is a little more sophisticated because we have to be willing to let go of going into the past or the future and to be present with what's here. And we have a lot of distractions even now. We don't have tigers chasing us, but we have social media. We have the busyness of doing multiple things at once. And at work, they frown on you doing one thing at a time. They want you to do 10 things at a time.
Multitask, right.
Yeah, and we are so used to being super stimulated that we become reliant on that to kind of move through the day. But this asks us to unwind that, to peel it off, and to just be with what is. And that's how we notice more about ourselves, who we really are. So we notice our habitual thinking, and the habitual thinking that leads to habitual action. So if I'm sitting and I become uncomfortable because I'm feeling something emotional, I might start to fidget, or I might start to desire to do something else. Like my husband, he's funny. When he doesn't want to have a conversation, he starts becoming very busy in the kitchen and washing dishes or putting things away. So I think we all have these go-to habits that we've learned over time.
My house is never as clean as when I've got something that I don't want to do. I'm like, oh, I really need to clean out that closet.
Yes, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Well, when you hear about meditation, a theme that always comes back is that you should be aware of your thoughts, but then let them go. So it's always trying to just quiet your mind and see what comes up, right?
Well, it's not trying to control the mind, but to step away from it. So thoughts are kind of like a river, and sometimes the river is high and it's rushing and it's mighty, and sometimes it's more in a drought where it's just thin and just a trickle. But if we can step back from the edge of the river and not put our feet in it, if we can stand back maybe 10 feet or 20 feet, then it becomes less daunting, less inviting. So we start to notice other things like the birds or the sky color. And so our perspective broadens. And it's like that in our physiological selves. So when we start calming the nervous system by anchoring on something that's stable, we start to notice our eyesight is broadening, our breath is calming, and our bodies are relaxing. So it's the same thing. If we can step away from the mechanism of thought that prompts stories, which prompt emotions and fears and doubts, then we start to see things as they are. So for people who have chronic pain, meditation is a way to set themselves into reality. So you start noticing, well, where do I feel this? And what does it actually feel like? What am I feeling around that? So notice that emotions are sometimes stronger and more painful than what you're actually feeling. So it's a way of putting a reality check to what's actually in this moment.
Well, when you talk about that with pain, we were talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza this morning, and he always says, if your thoughts can make you sick, can your thoughts also heal you? And he uses meditation a ton for just that. And, you know, he believes that if you sit with your thoughts long enough, you can make yourself well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you notice the pattern. So if you're having self-talk that's negative, you can start noticing, wow, when I feel that, this triggers this stream of thoughts. So when you notice what's happening, you have choice. And you can choose to replace the thoughts with something else. And it's really establishing new habits. So if your habit is to fall into that thinking, that painful thinking that's making you not well, then you can choose to do things that are leading you toward wellness. So you can focus instead on where you feel strong, where you feel good, and your breath, which is always a good thing to focus on. So it's a way to bring healing in.
Yeah.
The negative self-talk stops us from doing anything. And really, it stops people from meditating because they sit there and they go, oh, I can't sit still.
I have so much to do. I can't sit and do this.
Yeah, I'm too busy. I have too many thoughts. Well, if you have too many thoughts, you have plenty to watch. So you can see what's going on. You can step back from it a little bit and just notice what the state of things is right now.
Isn't there a statement or something from, I want to say it's a Buddhist statement, but it's along the lines of, I'm too busy to spend 10 minutes meditating, and then the answer is, well, then you need to spend 20 minutes meditating. Something along those lines. Like if you think you're too busy, then you definitely need to spend even more time meditating.
Absolutely.
We were talking about different retreats and things that we've been to before we started the interview, and I went to a retreat that was focused around Kundalini. And that was one of the things that in the meditation she talked about, was imagining just bringing a white healing light into your body and seeing kind of where you felt that it lingered, that maybe that was an area that needed healing, and to really focus on bringing the healing energy to that. And it's very powerful. You really can. You may not be able to cure everything, but meditation, your mind is a very powerful thing.
It is. And you think about all the things that we imagine that create stress and tension in our lives. It can equally do the opposite. But we have to choose to send it in that direction.
Which is really where the mindfulness comes in, if I understand it correctly. Really focusing on what your thoughts are and what they're potentially doing.
Yes, yeah.
So for someone who's completely unfamiliar with all of this, how do you recommend people kind of get started and make that switch to looking at things a little bit differently?
I think the start of this is finding your anchor, because we fly out. Anxiety is kind of moving from the ground into the sky, and it's in the head. So to get grounded and seated to start, you really need to feel how you're sitting, and you need to find your breath. And just to feel your breath the way it is, not to change it in any way, but just to start noticing it. And those are the real things that are present in the moment. And as you become better at that, then you sit and just wait and watch and see what's unfolding, because we never know what's going to happen. You can be sitting and watching your breath, and all of a sudden your nose itches, and there's a desire to reach up and wiggle your hand across your nose. But what happens if you don't do that? You start to notice the arc of things. So everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the beginning of the itch, the desires start to ignite. But then if you ignore the desire to scratch, something else will rise up and take your attention away from that. And then that's the end of that first arc. Then you're on to something else. So you start noticing these little patterns of how our attention shifts and changes, and desires rise and fall and fade away. And it's helpful to start noticing that, because we start to notice the things that cause suffering for us. So if we have some anxiety or tension, or we're not well, and we try to fill some kind of void with something else, we start to notice how that habit and that pattern works. And then we can start to say, well, if I don't do anything right now, it'll pass. So can I ride this out? Can I watch and see how that happens? You're not going to stop thought. You're not going to stop feelings, but you're going to be able to watch them and notice that everything is temporary. Nothing is permanent. So,
and once you notice that during meditation, and then you take that into your everyday life, that's when it changes you, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So you're sitting at work, and you're feeling the crush of a deadline, and you start eating. That's the thing with homework now.
Yes.
You can go down to the kitchen and grab a peanut butter jar. But you can stop and say, the desire to do this is going to change because this is a temporary situation, and the next thing that comes along may, not feel as pressured.
Yeah.
Or this pressure won't last forever.
Right.
It's just for 2 weeks until that deadline. And so you start to notice the arc of being.
That is real. So I'm thinking of personal things and kids and all this stuff, but I would imagine someone who suffers from anxiety has these things that come up constantly. I mean, it can be the what if scenarios, or the taking one small thing and blowing it into the whole world is ending.
Yeah.
How could someone use this technique to kind of calm that anxiety before they get completely in the throes of it?
To calm anxiety, you want to come back into the breath as an anchor and your body as an anchor. So grounding. So going in the opposite direction, because anxiety flies up in the air where the stories are. So as you start to notice, I'm feeling how I'm connected to this seat and my feet are on the ground, you start to notice your breath. And as you bring your attention to things, you'll notice that it broadens. So the breath broadens. When you're in anxiety, your breath is shallow.
Right.
And it's not full. Your nervous system responds to that with fight or flight. So you start tensing up. But as you start bringing attention back to your body, it starts to soften and relax. And you start to notice, okay, I am safe here. This is not happening in this moment in this room. And for a moment, you get to relax a little bit. So it doesn't wipe away these things, but it gives us more perspective so we can handle it in a better way.
So it really is about just training yourself to, I love the grounding part. I know when I was going through my my yoga teacher training, we did different types of yoga, and I'm very much the vinyasa, the flow, the constant movement.
I'm there with you, sister.
Yes. And when we did the class on yin yoga, I was like, oh my God, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And my teacher was like, then this is exactly what you need, because this is the grounding, this is the slowing down. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to get through this.
Yeah.
But it was so true. Like after that practice, I was like, okay, wait a minute. I actually feel a little more grounded. I feel a little slower. So sometimes it is the stuff that you push away and you don't want to acknowledge may actually be what you need. So.
Absolutely. And in a practice like you get to know yourself. Like, what do you feel when you're under pressure to be still or to feel what's here right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like sometimes when you're holding a pose for a long time and the instructor is talking and talking and talking, like sometimes I'm like, okay, stop talking.
Yeah, I don't care what you're saying.
Let's move on.
And they do that on purpose.
Instead of just sitting with it, I need to let it go and sit with it.
Yeah, or you can turn your mind to, where do I feel strong? Where do I feel like I want to get out of this? And how can I bring balance to that? So it's interesting.
Yeah.
You find things in the present moment to be interested in, basically.
And again, it's that mindfulness, that paying attention to where your mind is.
Yes.
And, I've read a lot, and Joni's in early childhood development, so I'm sure you've read the same things, but reading about children doing mindfulness meditation and how it can help them with behavior issues, and taking schools that had high discipline rates and things like that, and it can really help to calm them and ground them. Do you work with children at all? Or do you primarily work with adults?
I primarily work with adults, but I have worked with some youths. I'll say youths. My son was on a wrestling team, and I was the mind-body coach for the wrestling team. So I did meditation with some of the wrestlers, and one of them continued practicing with me. He did Ashtanga and he did meditation, and he needed that focus. He needed to be able to anchor into the moment and find as much strength as he could get. And he's still meditating as an adult now.
Wonderful.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is. But it's powerful and it's effective. And I think children can open up to what's going on a little more.
Right.
And I don't know what the pandemic has done. My kids were not in school during these past 2 years. They're all adult men now. But I imagine that having a moment where they're not focused into some camera, but can be by themselves and feel who they are, would be powerful for them.
I mean, powerful for all of us, but especially for children. Can you explain Ashtanga? I know. Can you just explain it?
I can. Ashtanga is the root practice of vinyasa. So it is the more ancient practice that vinyasa grew out of, but it is a set sequence. And the sequence is intelligently sequenced to bring you through warming the body and preparing for the things that follow. So you start with sun salutations. You do standing strong poses to start building up heat, and then you move into seated poses and twists, and then you move into back bending. So back bending is sequenced toward the end of a practice when your body's the warmest, and you can open up the most, and inversions at the end as well. There's a series A, which is called primary, and then there's a second series, which is sometimes called intermediate. The primary series is more forward folding, and the second series, intermediate, is more back bending. The first series, primary, is more for gut health. And so in ancient times, they didn't have sanitation like we have now. So disease was known to start in the gut. So this forward folding kind of wrings out the digestive organs and helps eliminate disease. And then the second series, intermediate, is to refresh the nervous system. So when you're opening the chest, when you're back bending, it's a lot of back bending in the second series, you're refreshing your nervous system and resetting the body from that aspect.
I remember this, again, from my training. There was a video, and the lady was an Ashtanga practitioner. And the person that was doing the poses had on a bodysuit that showed all the organs. Like it was inside. So it showed the organs, it showed the nervous system. That's kind of cool. And so every pose, she would stop and be like, okay, so look what's happening to the intestines in this pose, and look what's happening. So I was thinking that's what it was, but I wanted to make sure before I kept talking about it. So that was really cool.
And I want that suit now.
I know. And this is the thing that was so funny. The video was from like the 70s. So, you know, they're on the green shag carpet. But it was a fantastic visual of, I get it. Now I see what's happening.
Yeah, that's cool.
So with that, you incorporate the Buddhist meditation into the practice as well. So you're kind of doing both at the same time?
I do that. So David Williams is my teacher. He's actually from Greensboro. I met him probably about 15 years ago, and he is straight by the books, Ashtanga. His philosophy is that it's a moving meditation, and you are in the breath, and it's calming and soothing, and that's what it is.
I've done a workshop with him.
Have you really?
Did you come to my studio? Probably.
Would he have done a workshop at Cheryl? Cheryl's studio?
That was probably one of the Doug Swenson.
Oh, yes.
Who David taught.
Okay, you're right, 100%. Yep.
But definitely influenced by David's practice. But his meditation is what he calls perfect 10. You focus on the breath for 10 breaths, and you try to have no thought, nothing between the breaths. And if you find that you're distracted, you start over. So you practice until you have 10 perfect breaths. But you might have to have a timer. But that's a very simplistic practice. I think he's not a Buddhist student. He like Cindy was, but that is along the same lines.
Okay.
And so I've added more Dharma into my practice, where I'm talking like at the beginning of the practice. Like today we're going to focus on breath as a means of courage, and filling the lungs and emptying the lungs, bringing in energy, releasing doubt and fear. So I might temper the practice like that. But most Ashtanga teachers are just counting and saying the pose and counting the breath with you. So it's very physically oriented in the regular Ashtanga world. But in mindfulness Ashtanga practice, there's attention to being grounded and present. What's enough? What's too little? What's too much? Because you can really get caught up in the surge of energy in an Ashtanga practice, stretch too much, or try to muscle into poses that might not be available. And then, the task is, can you be okay with where you are today? Because things will be different the next time you get on your mat.
Yeah.
So, when I first started my meditation practice, it was always about, well, how long am I going to meditate? And so I used to set a timer, and I used to try to do it for a certain period of time. But now I kind of just know when I'm done. Is like, how long are you supposed to do it, or how long should you try to do it? Is there any kind of a guideline with that?
I think it's subjective, and Cindy, I ask her that all the time. She meditates every day, but sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's an hour.
Yeah.
But it's subjective to what her time availability is and how she's feeling. So if you're having a day where everything is just turning over in your head and it's really uncomfortable, as long as you can sit and watch it for a moment or two, then you're good. You've sat and you've watched that. If you can't sustain that, then end it. Don't sit there and suffer. So,
and it's probably about, again, being mindful of if your body is telling you, okay, we've covered everything we need to cover.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
If you try to force it, you probably lose some of the benefits.
Yeah, you're going to notice the state of things. So if it's a crazy storm of thoughts whirling around and you've sat and watched that, but you physically are starting to suffer from that and you need to get up.
Yeah.
I think it's hard because we live in a competitive society and we want to have like time. Like I track how much I ride my Peloton, so it's like I want to have more minutes this year. But with meditation, it's like, can you do a minute now? Can you do a minute later? You don't have to do an hour all in one setting.
Right.
But as long as you're checking in with yourself, I think that's the most important thing.
Well, I think that's important to hear, especially for people who don't meditate yet and are afraid of it and don't know how to approach it.
Yeah, a timer definitely helps in the beginning because you do have to get some emotional strength to sit.
Yeah.
People are not used to sitting. People are used to moving or zoning out. Like sitting and watching Netflix is not meditating. Right. It is. It's
That's a very good point.
It's giving your mind to something else. Yeah.
But you said something when you were talking about Ashtanga yoga, that recognizing where you are and being okay with it. I think it's the same thing with meditation. You're putting the effort in, you're mindful of what your body is saying and being okay with it.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful concept to take with you, as you said, off of your cushion or off your mat, is here's where I am.
Well, because we always talk about paying attention, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you notice when you're not feeling well and what you can do that makes you feel better.
Right.
When you're feeling really well and what you can do to sustain that. So you start to become more familiar with yourself and the patterns of how you feel and what you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
And we do need to be better to ourselves. And I think this is one way we can start allowing ourselves to take an interest in ourselves. I think it's like a stigma of, well, I can't pay too much attention to myself. I need to go pay attention to my family or my friends or my job.
Right.
And you do need to pay attention to yourselves. You're the only one who can feel who you are.
I'm glad that you said that, because that was the whole premise of us starting this series, is about how important it is to take care of yourself.
Self-care,
Yes.
finding the balance, but making sure that you are receiving an equal amount of
Because
the
you
care.
can't give if your cup is empty.
Exactly. Yeah. And what is a life lived if you get to the end of your life and you don't even know yourself?
Right.
So
that's beautiful.
Time is precious, and if you can, and I think meditation slows down time. So when you're in the process of watching the breath, you're watching the moments broaden out a little bit. So you kind of lose sense of time and space sometimes, and that's why maybe using a timer is good, because if you get into that space where you are comfortable and you want it to keep going on for a while, you might have other things to do and you might need to stop it down. And I think it's important to recognize that as much as we have desires to do things and to push things away, we also have desires to hold on to things. So sometimes we have a really great meditation practice and then we struggle to recreate that the next time we sit down. But it's always going to be different.
Yeah.
Every single time.
But I think the beauty of this, we've talked about a lot of great things through the season, but the beauty of this is it's just you, an individual person. You can do it anywhere. You can do it for any amount of time. And as you said, you can do it multiple times throughout the day. You may find that first thing in the morning is good, but maybe it's too hectic. Maybe you've got kids that you have to get to places. You can always fit it in and just give yourself that little bit of self-care and just a little bit of time for you.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
For beginners, I recommend what Eric Schiffman recommends. I've studied yoga with him and he's a meditator. He calls it bed med. And so he says, right when you wake up in the morning, your mind isn't as cluttered. It is not already in full speed ahead. So if you can elevate yourself to about 40 degrees with pillows, you can just stay there and just be still and feel your breath, hear the sounds that are around you, and just start your day with a little bit of calm and
So
peace.
sometimes I do that. I don't, not every day, but I do. I love doing that. I will just sit right up in the bed and pull the covers all the way up to my neck and just sit there.
Yeah.
I love
I
that.
try to make that kind of my gratitude time. Is I usually start off in my head is, thank you for blessing me with another day. And kind of go through what I'm thankful for, and just kind of, that's a good way to start my day. But I love the bed med.
I know,
I love that.
And you can do it at night, and you kind of watch the whirl of the day kind of go through. And sometimes that leads to better sleep, which is also another benefit of meditation. When you can stop and calm down, you have a better quality of sleep. So most people who meditate consistently find that they're sleeping better. And if you do wake up, you can meditate.
Yeah.
You can find your breath, and you can just let everything calm back down.
Yeah.
Because usually it's a thought or a dream or something that's rolling around in the head that wakes us up. And
Yeah.
And then you go down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
And then you end up getting up at 3 in the morning and like, what am I going to do for the rest of the morning?
Absolutely, yeah. And not wake up everybody else.
Well, if you're Joni, you go run a few miles, but
Oh, wow.
that's only an hour before your normal wake up anyway.
Sometimes I have issues sleeping
Oh, okay.
or staying asleep.
You need to meditate more.
Yes.
So I think we had talked, or I think you had talked about maybe leading us in a meditation.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
give us something that we could take with us to use on a regular basis.
It's totally portable. So let's do this.
Excellent.
So we start with the body and finding our seat, and we're on chairs, which I think is good. You can sit. If you're sitting on the floor, though, your hips need to be a little higher than your knees. And most people who are tight in the hips and have knee issues, the knees pop up, and so you get into retrograde in the low back. But you want to have your spine in its natural contours. So and sometimes you can pull your flesh back behind your sit bones. But
Do you recommend people have like a pillow or a meditation pillow or something to kind of lift the hips?
to do the lift, yes, you can sit on a yoga block. You can sit
Yeah.
on a folded blanket. If you're using a pillow, something that's dense enough to support you, so you're not kind of puffing down into the floor. But you want to feel where you're connected. So we feel connected to these seats, and you want to be able to put your feet out, and we've got little rungs here to hold our feet. So having a stable base. The pelvis is the base of the spine, so having a little bit of lumbar curve in the back. And we're so used to sitting for work. I think a lot of us are working online still, and so the slump forward happens. So you want to make sure that the spine is lifted, and the magic button is right here in the sternum, the notch right here. If you can just imagine lifting it up just a little bit, you start noticing the spine has a little more
You can really
space.
feel that. That's cool.
And it's kind of a magic thing if you do Ashtanga, because it ignites the bandhas. It brings the belly in and up and the pelvic floor in and up. So if you just concentrate on lifting here, and it brings the shoulders back and down. This is the mudra of calm abiding, taking the palms to the tops of the thighs. And then we'll start with our gaze forward and down. So we'll start with that open eye shamatha technique. And we don't have to drill a hole with our laser beam eyesight. We just want to soften our gaze and just take in what's in range of our eyesight here. And we'll make sure the head is on top of the spine, because again, in our online world, our chins come forward. So just stacking the spine up. Softening the jaw and taking the tip of the tongue and just placing it on the back of the top two front teeth. That helps the jaw to soften, and also stops saliva from gathering in the mouth, which is something that happens in meditation. And as we feel how we're sitting, we start to notice the breath coming in and out. And usually we notice it most profoundly at the rings of the nostrils. Then we might feel it moving through the nose, through the throat, into the chest and the belly. And as we start noticing the breath, the body starts to relax. And as the body relaxes, we start to notice a broader sense of our energy. And whatever it is perfect. We're just taking a snapshot of this moment. We're feeling the physical body, maybe anything that feels achy or tight, or relaxed and open. And we start to notice the feeling tone of the body, the mood, the emotions that might be present, which are usually a braid of a lot of things. And then the thoughts. And thoughts are not good or bad. They're the sweat of the brain, so they happen, and we can't eradicate thought or we would be dead. So we just give ourselves some distance. So we recognize and allow thoughts to be here. But thoughts will hook us and take us into stories of the past or the future. So when we recognize that that's happening, it's a moment of awakening. And that awakening is the opportunity to come back to what's here, like the breath. And that's all we do. We just sit and observe and take an interest in what we're observing. Observing desires and aversions. Observing states of being, which might be restlessness or sleepiness or doubt. And in recognizing anything that's here, we just take an interest in it and observe it like we're watching something in a jar. In our moments of awakening, coming back from thought or stories, we might find that our posture has changed, and it's perfectly fine to readjust the posture, to resit, re-lengthen. And sometimes when we start meditating, the body gets tired of sitting, so it's okay to refresh the body with a little bit of a twist, but we do it slowly so we don't overexert or excite the nervous system. So if you find that the spine is tired, you can slowly turn to your right and just take your gaze with you. And then slowly come back and turn to the other direction. And then come back. We'll bring it back by fluttering the eyes and taking a deeper breath, raising our eyesight. And before we rush into the next phase of the practice, my teacher, Cindy, has a dedication of merit of the practice where she says 4 things that bring the practice and its benefits beyond ourselves into the world. And she takes palms together, hands to the heart, and she says, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings never be parted from freedom's true joy. And may all beings dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. And then we bow and we bring ourselves back about. We are ready to take this forward.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
So I have to say, I've never done a meditation with my eyes open.
Me neither.
That was amazing. Like,
Very different.
very different, but I felt so focused.
Yay.
Usually when I close my eyes, it's almost like I have all these visions and these ideas and these things. But with that, I was totally focused. And at one point, everything else disappeared. Like, I couldn't even see my body anymore. I was kind of like, oh, I'm invisible. But that was really, really amazing.
I love it. I love it. And it's when you enjoy it, when you're interested in it, you'll do it. So if you close your eyes, I think you tend to fall asleep a little more, or you go into a dreamlike state. You're seeing the subconscious mind manifesting on the back of your eyelids.
Right.
And it's sometimes a little scary or distracting.
Yeah.
But this you're looking at something that's here.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
It was nice.
Right.
That was fantastic. So we know where you are, but for the viewers and people that would be interested in some of your online offerings, or how do they find you? How do they get in touch with you?
At AndreaDyerYoga.com, and I do have on-demand classes on there. I have about 400 classes in my library, and there are meditations on there. The meditations are free. I am such a passionate person about meditation that I want people to have no excuses to not do
That's nice.
to not do meditation. So there are also meditation courses on there. I have a Meditation 101 course, and then I'm forgetting the other one, but I have 2 on there, and they're subscriptions, so you can do it. I think one of them you have 3 months to go through all of the steps and learn how to meditate. And it takes you a little bit deeper than what we did today. It talks a little more about some of the distractions that happen when you're sitting, and a little more detail on how to focus and come away from those distractions.
Oh, wonderful. Oh my goodness, this was so fantastic.
It was. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much.
I do Ashtanga every Monday morning, so if anybody is really wanting to be awake and try meditation and movement, it's 7 a.m. on Monday mornings. I do a live stream Zoom. So.
Oh, wonderful. And that's at Andrea Dyer.
AndreaDyerYoga.com.
Awesome. Wonderful.
We'll have to
Thank
try it
you.
out.
We will.
Please
Oh my
do.
goodness.
That would be great.
Tk you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was nice.
It was fun. Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome.
We learned a lot again.
We learned a lot, and I have to say, I feel amazing. It reminds me how good meditation really makes you feel. And
Yes, it does. You know how you're supposed to let things go when you think of them?
yeah.
I just kept focusing on that my contacts were feeling dry.
And you had to let it go.
I did, because my eyes were open. I'm used to meditating with my eyes closed. So when I was focusing, I was like, they're really getting dry. They're getting
So
dry.
I think it was the same thing for me, but I don't have contacts, but I kept thinking, I am blinking a lot. But the thing that was funny is after I realized I was thinking that, I thought to myself, okay, it's gonna pass. And eventually, I don't know when it happened, but at some point I was like, oh, I'm not blinking anymore. So what she said is true. You recognize it, and then if you just sit with it, it will fade.
Yes.
And it really did.
Yes.
But it was kind of funny at first. I was like, I am blinking like this.
But I want to go to her website and try some of her stuff.
So I do too. When she had a studio here in Greensboro, and when I first started doing yoga, I was going around to the different studios, and I remember going to her studio and taking one of her classes and thinking, wow, this is a really cool type of yoga, because I mean, as we've talked about, different types of yoga work in different ways.
Right.
And I remember liking it, but then I found hot yoga and I really liked the heat.
Yes.
So I didn't go back. But today made me realize that I want to revisit Ashtanga, and especially incorporating the meditation into it.
I think I want to too.
So we should do that.
Okay.
Monday morning at 7 a.m.
Okay, I'm in.
You'll already be up for 6 hours, so you'll be ready to go.
I'll call you, make sure you're up.
You'll have to. You may have to come drag me out of bed, but it's all good. But yeah, that was a good one. And
Yes.
being mindful, being aware, being present, it's all intertwined.
And so important.
Very important. So yeah, good job. You found another great one.
Oh, I can't wait till next week.
I can't either.
Thanks for joining.
See you then.